History and Art Appreciation. The Bauhaus from 1999 to 1933. First of all, what is it? It was a revolutionary art and design school. It combined art, craft, and technology with the goal of creating functional, modern designs that could improve everyday life. On April 12, 1919, Walter Gropius signed his contract as director of the Bauhaus, formerly the Grand Ducal Saxon Academy of Fine Arts in Weimar. He formally merged with the Kunstgewerbeschule, a school of applied arts, which had already been dissolved in 1915, and renamed it Staatliches Bauhaus in Weimar in the same month. The manifesto was published, in which Gropius announced his program with the pathos of a new beginning after the end of the First World War. Gropius did not call for a new style or a new art, but much more fundamentally a reform artistic work. This was to be traced back to its foundations and prerequisites, which he saw in craftsmanship understood as the handling of materials as the foundation of all art. The social foundation of craftsmanship was also discovered for art. It was now assigned a role in the working context of society. Since only craftsmanship, not art, could be taught, Bauhaus teaching was to be based on crafting training in workshops. The ideal of a collaborative community of all the arts corresponds to concept of a unified work of art. The reunification of the artistic disciplines, sculpture, painting, applied arts and crafts, into a new form of architecture. Although utopian in its objectives, Gropius' program represents a shift toward universally valid bending principles and demands of a practical life. In the same year, Gropius appointed three artists as a Bauhaus masters. The first one, the painter Lionel Feininger. The second one, the sculptor Gerard Marx. And the third one, the painter and art educator Johannes Eden. This one became the central figure of the early Bauhaus. Initially, art instruction took place in individual teachers' classes, while vocational training took place in the workshops. In the first semester, only in the gold, silver, and coppersmithing, bookbinding, weaving, and graphic printing. In addition, individual architecture courses were offered. In 1920, in October, George Much was appointed master craftsman. Over the course of the year, further workshops opened: the workshop for wood and stone sculpture, the workshop for decorative painting, later mural painting, the carpentry workshop, and the pottery workshop. To further connect art and craft, the workshops were each led by a craftsman as Fachmeister, master craftsman, and as and an artist as Formeister, form master. Lionel Feininger took over the printing shop, Gerard Max the pottery. All other workshops were initially led by Johannes and George Munch. A mandatory trial semester under Johannes Eden led to the so-called preliminary course. This artistic preparatory apprenticeship addressed the elementary conditions of every design: the material, its possibilities for shaping and representation, and construction. The preliminary course served to explore the personality and creativity of each student and was intended to create unequal conditions for foreign training. Eden's exercises, in particular, such as studies of rhythm or contrasting form and brightness, determined the formal language of Bauhaus products until 1922. Athens used to teach the color theory, that is this one that we have in the slide. In 1921, Gropius and Adolf Meyer built the Expressionist Sommerfeld House in Berlin. This was the first attempt to realize desired unity of the arts in construction. Then we have Traditious Ballet. This was designed by Oskar Schlema. He sought to conceive the body as another space of art transformed by three costumes and movement through the use of wardrobe composed of three basic forms and the use of three principal colors that are yellow, pink, and black. In 1922, Walter Gropius has been reorienting his ideas about the goals of the Bauhaus. He wanted to create consumer goods and architecture on an industrial scale, and Expressionism was not the right style for that. But neoplasticism, constructivism, and abstraction were. This leads to disputes with Johannes Itten, the central figure of the early Bauhaus. And then he rejects this and gradually withdraws. In 1923, the constructivist artist Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, replacing Eden, became head of the metal workshop and taught the preliminary course from the fall onward. The house am Horn in Weimar, the school's first building project, is being built, furnished by the workshops. In 1924, in September, the new government terminated the Bauhaus master's contract as a precaution, effective in April 1925. The harassment, although functionally justified, was politically motivated, making continued work impossible. Therefore, on December 26th, the master declared the dissolution of the Bauhaus. In 1925, in March, at the initiative of Mayor Fritz Hess, the Dessau City Council decided to take over the Bauhaus as a municipal school. Classes began at the Bauhaus in Dessau at the beginning of April. Walter Gropius announces a new program in which the importance of industry had science for design dominates. He declares the Bauhaus mission to be the contemporary development of housing, which should span from the simple household appliance to the finished dwelling. Gropius calls for systematic experimental work in theory and practice, informal, technical, and economics areas. The workshops are described as laboratories for the production of models for industry. Marcel Breuer built the first chair made with steel tubes. 1926. In October, the state government of Saxony-Anhalt recognized the Bauhaus as a university, and the Bauhaus masters were appointed professors. Since then, the Bauhaus has used the subtitle School of Design. Since then, the education has been equivalent to a degree program culminating in the Bauhaus diploma. The school gained international recognition during this period through its spectacular new buildings. In addition to the school building, residential buildings for the Bauhaus masters and the South housing estate were built. In 1931, in November, local council elections were held in the South, and the Nazi Party emerged as the strongest party. In this election manifestos, its primary demands were the cancellation of subsidies of the Bauhaus and the demolition of the Bauhaus buildings. Then, in 1932, political disputes at the school intensified. On August 22, the South City Council passed the Nazi Party motion to discontinue teaching at the Bauhaus in October 1st. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe decided to continue the school in Berlin as a private institute. This was made possible in part by licensing income. In October, a building in Berlin, Steglitz, was rented and covered for school operations. In 1933, on April 11th, at the beginning of the summer semester, the Bauhaus building in Berlin was searched and sealed by police. 32 students were temporarily arrested, and on July 20, a conference of teachers decided to close the Bauhaus. And for the conclusion, for me, this was a revolutionary movement. The greatest contribution to modernity was its vision. They were looking beyond the the time they were, and all most of the things that we use nowadays are because of their inventions. And besides that, the modern architecture, for me, it looks interesting, it looks elegant, and it is pretty beautiful. Their minds were ready to create different things, and they were always thinking and had a lot of imagine, and they were really innovative.